They said women behind a sniper rifle were nothing but a liability, unfit to bear the weight of long missions or deliver the critical shots when lives depended on it. That's exactly what a SEAL commander had scribbled into her evaluation 3 years earlier, using those words to slam the door on her request to join their embedded training program. Now, under a cold and silent sky, fate had dragged his judgment back to haunt him. Sergeant First Class Talia Grant steadied her eye against the Leupold Mark VI scope, the glass catching the faint shimmer of moonlight as she tracked that very commander's team nearly 2 kilometers away. 847 meters pinned down and desperate, their SOS crackling into dead air for 40 agonizing minutes. The only sniper close enough to answer them was the very soldier he had dismissed as unreliable. Around her stretched the jagged spines of the Hindu Kush, swallowed in a suffocating darkness so complete that even night vision struggled to push it back. And before we go deeper into this night that would rewrite her legacy, let me pause. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Here on Old Bill's Tales, veterans and their families always bring the sharpest insights. So if this story stirs something in you, don't forget to subscribe and join the circle. That night, recently separated from the army, 31-year-old Talia lay prone on a ridgeline 11,000 feet high. The rifle braced against her shoulder wasn't standard issue. It was a custom-built bolt-action weapon on a Remington 700 frame, chambered in 338 Lapua Magnum, designed to spit back at distance and power. She had inherited more than just steel and wood. She had inherited bloodline skill. Raised in the rugged high country near Red Haven, Montana, Talia had grown up under the steady hand of her grandmother, Margaret Hale, a former Women's Army Corps sharpshooter who once picked off targets in the Korean hills. Just 2 months earlier, after 12 long years in uniform, Talia had stepped out of the army. Yet here she was again in the Hindu Kush, not as a soldier, but as a private contractor. Her task tonight simple on paper: overwatch for a CIA safehouse extraction. Everything rolled along smoothly until 2323 local, when the emergency channels exploded with static and panic, the kind of sound that strips the warmth from your blood. It was the beacon of a SEAL team, their voices raw with desperation, begging for immediate fire support. But the net stayed silent. No one was answering them. The quick reaction force? Still 40 minutes away. Air support? Grounded at Falcon Ridge Airfield, weathered in by a merciless storm. Talia thought back to where it all began. Long before the army, long before evaluations and rejection letters. She first learned to squeeze a trigger on her family's ranch, where Margaret taught her that shooting was never about brute strength, but about mastering your own breathing, letting the world slow down until the shot broke itself. Margaret had been one of just 12 women trained as snipers in a nearly forgotten Korean War program, a fact buried in sealed records until the mid-90s. Along with her father's handcrafted rifle, she passed down a lesson. The finest marksmen weren't always the biggest or the loudest. They were the ones who could remain calm when chaos demanded otherwise. That truth followed Talia into her studies at the University of Montana, where her brilliance in physics paired with 3 consecutive national long-range competition wins caught the Army's eye. She was pulled into sniper school at Fort Benning and didn't just graduate. She walked out as Distinguished Honor Graduate, one of only 4 women to survive that crucible in her class. Her instructors marveled at how she could read the air itself, calculating wind and elevation without a single instrument, a skill forged by years under Montana's shifting gusts. But textbooks and training ranges could only take her so far. Her true baptism came in 2019, deep in the Darak Valley of Afghanistan, where she was embedded with the 75th Ranger Regiment. Over 6 relentless days, she notched 17 confirmed kills, every one over 1,200 meters, holding a battered platoon together until reinforcements clawed their way through. It was there she earned the name that stuck, Avenger. After sending a bullet 1,623 meters through fickle, tearing crosswinds to erase the enemy sniper who had already claimed 2 Rangers' lives. Despite her record, doors stayed bolted shut. Old prejudice lingered like smoke. Commanders parroting the same words written in that SEAL officer's evaluation. Women can't carry the weight, can't detach enough to pull the trigger, can't last in the extremes of Tier 1. And as those stubborn voices echoed, the emergency frequency beside her grew sharper, louder, more urgent. The call signs came across the net, sharp and unmistakable. SEAL Team 7, Trident 3-1, and with them came a sting of memory. This wasn't just any unit. It was the same outfit whose commander, Nathan Cole, had buried her career 3 years back with a cold evaluation that spread through selection boards like wildfire. In that report, he'd claimed women lacked the muscle for the long stalks, the cold detachment for pulling the trigger when it counted, and the stamina to endure operations that stretched for days. His words hadn't been just opinion. They'd been used as ammunition to keep doors locked tight against her. Part of the machinery of doubt that slowed every woman who tried to walk this path. Talia remembered the day she sat in the brigade commander's office, those words lying on the desk like a verdict carved in stone. Around them sat a stack of her commendations, medals that seemed invisible in that moment. 17 confirmed kills, 3 Bronze Stars, a Distinguished Service Cross. All of it washed aside by theoretical doubts written by a man who had never seen her in the fire. Now his voice was trembling through her earpiece, carrying a strain she had never heard from him before. Cole was calling for fire support, desperation cracking the edges of his command tone. His team was jammed tight in a narrow Afghan valley, enemy fire raining down from the high ridges. 2 men were already bleeding out, and their sniper was dead. Mortars were walking closer, locking their position down, and enemy fighters were moving to close the noose. Talia flipped to the emergency channel and spoke into the void with a calmness that masked the storm inside her. Contractor Overwatch Alpha, Ridge 77. I've got eyes on your grid. The net went quiet for a beat. Then she heard Cole's breath hitch, his words stumble. He knew exactly who that was. His deputy broke the silence, spitting coordinates and threat markers. Talia locked into her Kestrel 5700 ballistic meter, feeding numbers into her mind faster than she could write them. The wind was brutal, gusting 18 to 25 knots hard from the northwest, a full-value crosswind at an ugly angle. The thermometer read -12 Celsius, the kind of cold that made metal sting the fingers and warped ballistic coefficients. Every shot tonight would be on the bleeding edge of what her rifle and cartridge could do. The very kind of extreme long-range marksmanship Cole had said she wasn't capable of. Her hands stayed steady, building her range card with the patience of ritual. But her mind couldn't help wandering back 3 years to the moment Cole had looked straight through her, not at her, explaining that combat shooting took a killer instinct women simply don't possess. He hadn't been with her in the Darak Valley, where she held security for 18 straight hours, making shot after shot while enemy rounds chipped the rock inches from her head. He hadn't seen her earn the name Avenger with every pull of the trigger. Through the cold night, another voice whispered from memory. Her grandmother Margaret Hale, soft but sharp as ever. Pride blinds men, Talia. And when they don't see you coming, that's when you're most dangerous. Margaret had survived Korea by becoming a ghost, striking shots men swore were impossible, saving lives from the shadows. Now here was the irony. Cole's men, the very ones whose leader had branded her a liability, were depending on her to survive. For a moment, Talia considered silence. She could let the quick reaction force arrive in 40 minutes, let the storm swallow this problem without her lifting a finger. But then the radio caught her heart off guard. A young voice broke through, barely more than 22, raw and panicked, calling for his mother before a team leader shut him down. That single plea shattered any hesitation. Cole might have written the evaluation, but that boy hadn't. Neither had the men bleeding out in that valley. They weren't names in a file. They were sons, brothers, husbands. Her anger couldn't weigh more than her duty to them. Her crosshairs found the faint glow of a machine gun nest, just a blur of heat on her thermal optic, 1,047 meters away. The numbers lined up in her head. Elevation for distance and air density, wind drift for that crosswind, spin drift, Coriolis effect at this range. The shot cracked into the night, thunder rolling across the valley, and the gun went silent. Cole's team came alive over comms, disbelief bleeding through their voices as they confirmed the hit. Talia was already working the bolt, shifting for the next problem. At 1,562 meters, a mortar team was preparing their next round. The wind had changed again, climbing to 28 knots. She adjusted, settled, exhaled. Another shot, another hit. The mortar went quiet, but the enemy was learning. They had caught the flicker of her muzzle flash, and now tracer fire clawed toward her ridgeline. Rounds hissed overhead, kicking rock chips across her cheek. The hunt had turned, and the night was only just beginning. Tracer fire cracked overhead as Talia rolled 20 meters across the ridge, shifting fast to a new firing point behind jagged stone. Chips of rock burst at her side, but she stayed low, steady, determined. Over comms, the SEALs rattled off 3 more enemy positions, one of them a sniper already sighted in on their valley floor. But she spotted him first, his thermal outline glowing faintly inside the dark mouth of a cave, 1,723 meters away, just beyond the safe edge of what her cartridge was designed for. The wind was vicious now, shrieking through the canyon, gusting between 25 and 35 knots, close to 40 miles per hour at its peaks. At that range, her bullet would crawl nearly 3 seconds through the night sky, and those seconds stretched into a lifetime in combat. To make it count, she'd need to anticipate everything: his rhythm, the canyon's swirling drafts, the second he chose to lean and fire again. The enemy sniper's muzzle flashed. His round smacked dirt dangerously close to Cole's men. Through her thermal, she caught his silhouette shift backward, working the bolt. That was her moment. Numbers ran through her mind as naturally as breath. 14 mils elevation, 6 mils windage, adjustment for the downslope. A ballet of physics scribbled in her mind's eye. It felt like art disguised as arithmetic. She squeezed. 3 endless seconds later, his heat signature folded backward, vanishing from her scope. Cole's voice broke across the net, all clipped professionalism masking the weight of relief. Enemy sniper down. Immediate suppression on grid November Charlie 47. But Talia was already shifting, already feeding fresh numbers into her mind, because this night wasn't close to over. 4 more firing positions lit her thermal. The quick reaction force was still 23 minutes out, and her magazine count was bleeding low. 18 rounds for what could be dozens of advancing fighters. The situation was collapsing fast. Taliban reinforcements were pushing through the cover, fanning out to flank the SEAL's valley floor. She could see them clearly in her scope, but every shot meant exposing herself, every flash drawing deadlier fire. Rounds punched rock so close they stung her cheek with flying fragments. Over the radio, Cole's voice cracked through again, stripped of command steel, raw with urgency. "They're in the dead space. We can't hit them." Dead space. The cruelest fold of terrain, invisible from the SEAL's angle but wide open from hers. She counted them. 12 fighters slipping through the shadowed fold, preparing to storm the trapped Americans. 30 seconds, and they'd be on top of them. 700 meters, moving targets, heavy wind. The sniper school at Benning had called it theoretical shooting, the kind of drill instructors brushed off as fantasy. But Margaret Hale, her grandmother, had taught her something Benning never could. You don't fight the wind, you move with it. You listen, you feel the rhythm of the gusts, and you fire in the silence between. Talia let the storm wash through her, slipped into a flow state so complete it felt like time slowed. The rifle in her hands wasn't steel anymore. It was bone, blood, an extension of her will. She fired, one dropped, then another. By the fifth, the columns scattered, panic in their heat signatures. She tracked them like shadows, the way Margaret once taught her to lead pronghorn antelope across the open Montana plains. 8 down, 9, 10. Every trigger pull was instant math and instinct merged together. 12 shots in 90 heartbeats of a second hand. Each one a thread pulled tight through the gale. The last 2 fighters managed to dive into cover, but by then the assault was shattered. Their momentum was gone, their advance broken under her storm of fire. On the far horizon, the thump of rotor blades carried hope. Quick reaction force helicopters swept in, their Apache escort carving the mountainside with streams of 30mm cannon fire, lighting up the night with thunder and flame. Nathan Cole's team was alive. The same woman he had once stamped as a liability had saved them all. As the first light of dawn cracked across the Hindu Kush, evacuation birds dropped onto the valley floor. Through her scope, Talia watched the battered SEALs hauling their wounded toward the helicopters, every step a victory. And still, she did not leave her post. For 6 more hours, she remained on that ridge, her rifle steady, overwatch unbroken until the last man was safely out of danger. When it was done, the count stood at 23 confirmed hits, 17 enemies eliminated at distances military doctrine labeled exceptional. 3 days later, her contractor liaison passed her an encrypted message. Cole himself had submitted a formal revision to his evaluation, confessing that his judgment had been rooted in theory and prejudice, not in the reality he had witnessed through her crosshairs. In the report, he recommended her for a civilian commendation and went further, asking if she would consider training his sniper section. Talia declined the offer, but she accepted something else. That December, she walked into a SEAL Team 7 reunion as an invited guest. Cole met her at the door. His entire team gathered behind him. The young operator who had once broken over the net crying out for his mother stood there alive because of her aim. Cole handed her a plaque etched in steel and oak. Honorary member, Trident 3-1. Beneath it, the words that would follow her forever, for the guardian angel who answered when no one else could. 6 months later, change rippled through the special operations community. Selection boards quietly revised their talking points. And when Cole testified before a review board, he used her actions as proof that qualification should be measured by capability, not gender. Before the year was out, the first female candidates stepped into SEAL sniper training. A doorway pried open by her trigger pull on that freezing night. Talia returned home to Red Haven, Montana, where the wide skies and sweeping winds of her childhood still taught lessons no manual could. On her family's ranch, she now trains military and law enforcement snipers, passing down the knowledge that her grandmother, Margaret Hale, once gave her. Above her desk hang two things side by side: Margaret's Korean War Medal and Cole's plaque. Together, they serve as proof that the most formidable warriors are often the ones the world never sees coming, until the moment they rise from the shadows and change everything.